Ancient Egypt and the Nile River Valley by Alex Ross for Swan Valley High School AP History. Ancient Egypt. Egypt is located in northern Africa along the Nile River. The location of ancient Egypt was where the weather was hot and dry with mild winters and rainy seasons. Being where ancient Egypt is, it could not rely on consistent rain for their crops. Therefore, agriculture had to rely on irrigation. Egypt was isolated for most of its existence due to the fact that it was surrounded by deserts and the Nile River. Egypt was subject to heavy downpours and floods. However, it was regular and predictable. The Nile River Valley. The Nile River Valley is located in northern Africa in Egypt. The Nile River is the longest river in the world. The river protects Egypt from invasion by a series of cataracts, or areas where water was too swift and rocky to allow boats to pass. Planning in ancient Egypt. The Great Egyptian Civilization was the longest lived in world history, starting around 31,000 BCE to 525 BCE. Almost every aspect of ancient Egyptian lifestyle was in some way affected by the Nile River. Even the planning of a town or city was done so around the river. The settlement of a town had to take two main considerations into mind: the proximity to a water source and the height it was built above flooding of the Nile. Little else is known about urban planning. Ancient Egypt is known for its monumental architecture through its pyramids, temples, palaces, and statues. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt promoted art by having most of the art made after them and for them through great statues and monuments made for them, one of the most important being the Great Pyramids. The religious leaders promoted statues of their gods to be made. Ancient Egyptians used record-keeping in the form of writing scripts, one of them being hieroglyphics. It was used for history, religion, and translation. It is believed that Egyptian law was based on a common sense view of right and wrong, following the codes based on the concept of Ma'at, and it represented truth, order, balance, and justice in the universe. This concept allowed that everyone except of slaves should be viewed as equals under the law, regardless of wealth or social position. The vast amounts of wealth that ancient Egypt possessed proved that they traded with many countries around them. Weapons of ancient Egypt. Over its long history, the Egyptians employed a wide variety of ancient weapons. Bows. The bow remained the main armament of Egyptian forces throughout Egypt's long military history, perhaps due to the lack of armor worn by Egyptian warriors and their enemies in the hot climate where they operated. The ancient Egyptians continued to use both longbows and composite bows throughout their history. War chariots. War chariots represent more of an Egyptian weapons platform than an actual weapon in itself. However, chariots became indispensable to the Egyptian armies. The Egyptians built fast, light chariots and would use them to race into position, shower their enemies with arrows, and retreat before a counterattack could be launched. The khopesh. The khopesh is probably the most iconic of the Egyptian weapons. It features a curved, thick blade and measured about 2 feet long. A khopesh has a thick, crescent-shaped blade that is used for slashing. Spears. The second largest contingent in the Egyptian army after the bowmen was a spearman. Spears are cheap, and it takes little training for levy soldiers to figure out how to use them. Charioteers also carried spears as secondary weapons to keep enemy infantry from getting too close. Similar to arrowheads, Egyptian spears progressed through stone, obsidian, copper, and finally iron stages. Throwing sticks. Although a throwing stick is unlikely to kill anyone, it could have even used to distract an enemy during melee combat. Egyptian axes. Another weapon that the Egyptians developed with a uniquely Egyptian style was the battle axe. The first Egyptian battle axes were produced during the Old Kingdom period, around 2000 BC, and were constructed of bronze. Their crescent-shaped blades were affixed into grooves along the handles. Transportation. There were very few modes of transportation in ancient Egypt. Walking. The major means of getting about was, not surprisingly, by foot, and literally so. The Egyptians used sandals, but when walking long distances, they seem to have carried them in their hands and put them on when arriving at their destination. Ferries. During the season of intuition, getting around was more difficult. One of the moral duties of the nobility and the wealthy in general was the ferrying across the river of people who had no boat. Leaders. Carrying chairs were borne by men, but sometimes they were apparently adapted and strapped to the back of donkeys as a sort of primitive saddle. Chariots. For their daily use, even the pharaohs preferred the chariot. Expensive to keep, they never became popular means of transportation and served only the elite and military. Carts. Wheeled vehicles, other than chariots, are rarely depicted. Sledges. Wheeled vehicles are never widely used, and for heavy loads, they were not strong enough anyway. Giant statues and the like were loaded onto wooden sledges and dragged by large numbers of men. Beasts of burden. Donkeys were domesticated in prehistoric times and employed extensively for carrying loads, and less commonly for riding. Thank you for listening to my project on ancient Egypt. I have all my information that I got from this on the citation page. Ancient